Today we're going to talk about for the glory of the King, that we would live lives with the intent and the purpose that we would glorify God. Here's what we have on tap today. Our theology today is this: God is worthy of all glory. That's our theology. God is worthy of all glory. Our application is this: our lives are best spent for the glory of God. Our lives are best spent for the glory of God. And then our prayer today is, God, give us a passion for your glory. You know, when we talk about glory, when the Bible, rather, talks about glory, it's sometimes a noun, sometimes a verb, sometimes an adjective. We talked a couple of weeks ago about glory as a noun, when God shows up on a mountain and the entire mountain's covered in smoke and fire, or the sound of his voice was like the sound of trumpets, or the whole land is shaking, or Ezekiel sees the glory of God, and from the waist up, he's like glowing metal, and from the waist down, he's like fire, and he's surrounded by rainbows. And so these are all ideas that the authors of the scripture are giving us to show us who God is, or the glory that he has, or kind of the character he has. But when we talk about glorifying God, what we are doing is we are rightly attributing to him his worth. We are rightly attributing to God that which is due his name, that which is for his honor, or that which is for his glorification, to magnify him, to build him up. The best way for us to think about this, well, maybe not the best way, a way for us to think about this is how we talk about things that we're excited about, how we talk about things that we're passionate about, how we talk about things that we care about, right? So an example, though, that I will use is I have a friend. We've been friends for about 15 years. It's funny because neither one of us liked each other the first time we met each other, but then we became friends pretty quickly after that. And we'd been friends for about 2 years. I've used this example before, but we became friends after about 2 years, I asked him one day, I said, "Do you like your wife?" And he goes, "Yeah, of course I like my wife." And I said, "I'm just asking because I've never heard you say anything nice about her. In fact, I've heard you say a lot of bad things about her, or insult her, or take shots at her all the time." And he goes, "Oh, I just do that with you because we're friends." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm just telling you, as somebody who's your friend, who's known you really well for a couple of years, like the only impression I have of your wife is negative." And to his credit, because he loves Jesus and he's a godly guy, he changed that. And now all I've heard about his wife for the last 13 years are great things. And he blesses his wife and he encourages his wife. Another example that I like to use, it's kind of a poor example, but that I like to use of glory, is when I grew up in, like old West Texas kind of Baptist churches or whatever, there was always the lady in the church who hugged everybody who was like older, and she always had a very flowery perfume. And she would come and she would hug you with this flowery perfume on, and you would wear that perfume for the rest of the day, And as she leaves and she kind of wafts it through the air, you are surrounded, if you will, by her glory, and then her glory kind of stays with you for the rest of the day, right? And so that's kind of a little bit maybe more of a negative connotation than I want it to be, but like this idea of being able to give God glory, to be able to tell God or to proclaim things about God that show his worth or his value. And so I thought that what I would do with you is tell you a few times in my life where I've really clearly seen, and I'm avoiding some of these. If you want to, there's some that I just don't know if you're ready for. So if you want to come Wednesday night and talk to me, we can talk more about some of these other ones that I won't share here right now. But I remember this was 1997. I was 22, and I was poor and didn't have any money. I had told you guys a few weeks back about how I was living off of rotten bananas. That was my food every day, a rotten banana and a bite of a piece of old French loaf. And I was praying and I was asking God to meet my needs, to provide for me. And I think I told you guys the story of, at this point, I worked at a landscape company, and I was going out to do some work at the mall. We lived in Lubbock at this time, or I lived in Lubbock at this time. And my boss's son, who was over our crew, called me, and it was raining that day. It was sprinkling, kind of drizzly rain, not a hard rain. And he goes, "Everybody else called in sick, Ryan." He goes, "Are you working today?" I was like, "Yeah, I need to work." He goes, "Okay, meet me at the mall." So I met him at the mall, and because he was the boss's son, which made him kind of a boss of us, he just said, "All right, pull up all the trash out of this part of the parking lot, and I'll come pick you up at lunch." And I was like, okay. So I'm out there working in the rain, and I rented a room out of a couple's house, this old couple's house. It was not one of my most pleasant memories. In fact, my best friend at the time, Scott, he's a pastor in San Antonio now. We joke that 1997 didn't happen. Or if we talk about 1997, we pretend we can't remember where I lived because it was just that bad of a situation. So I paid $60 a week to rent a room out of this couple's house. And I was due every Friday. And it was Friday. This day was Friday, and I had no money, none. And so here I am, and I'm out in the rain, and I'm pulling trash out of this parking lot in the mall. And it's just interesting how people tend to view blue-collar workers or whatever, and they tend to like go right past you or, just anyway. And so here I am, I'm pulling trash out, and I'm praying, God, like I don't have any food. I don't have any money for my $60 rent today. I don't know how I'm going to get it. I need you to provide for me. And I lifted up all the trash to put it in my bag, and there were 2 brand new crisp $50 bills under the pile of trash. Not wet, not muddy, not dirty, nothing. And I was like, kind of like did the quick look around, like, wow, that's awesome, right? And so I was able to pay my $60 rent and then buy some groceries. I hadn't had like groceries in like 2 weeks at that point. And it's just really interesting to see how God provides. It's really neat to see the kinds of things that God does. And one of my favorite stories to tell about how God has provided for me, if you've heard it before, you're going to have to listen to it again. But when we talk about God meeting our needs, or we talk about God, like just God doing something, or God making, I don't know. This story is about God's provision for me. But I was 23. I had planned a trip to India, and I needed $65 for my passport, right? Have I told you this? I've told y'all? Oh, well, I'm telling you again. All right, so I needed $65 for my passport. I needed $65 for my passport, and I had no money. My whole trip to India was going to cost me about $4,000. I was going to spend 7 weeks in India by myself and do a mission trip there. I didn't know I was going by myself until I had agreed to go. And the guy who had approached me and said, hey, do you want to go to India? I was like, yeah, let's go to India. And so the next day we met, and I said, when are we going? He goes, we're not, you are. And he held up a pamphlet and showed me a 1-inch picture of a guy and said, this guy will pick you up at the airport. And I said, am I meeting a team there? He goes, you're the team. And I was like, but wait, but who else is there? And he goes, this guy, he'll pick you up at the airport. And I said, okay. And he goes, you need to take $20 a day. So I needed to take $1,000 for my trip roughly. And I needed to pay for my apartment for the 2 months I was gone. And all with my plane ticket and everything, I needed $4,000. But my first thing that I needed was $65 to pay for my passport. That's the first thing I needed, okay? And so God had really laid it on my heart to not raise any money for it, to just pray, to trust him. And I was like, okay, God, here's the deal. And I was very arrogant. And I said, we're 10 weeks out, which means I need you to provide $400 a week for the next 10 weeks. That makes sense to me. God, I don't know how you do math, but I need $4,000. $400 a week over the next 10 weeks will cover it. 2 weeks go by, not a dime. And I need to put my passport application in the mail tomorrow for $65. And I went, okay, God, we don't need $400 right now, but we do need $65. Okay? So I'm praying and I'm praying and I'm praying. And I'm literally on the face of my apartment on Park Street and Slide there in Lubbock, Texas. And I'm praying in my apartment. My roommate, Scott, pastor friend of mine who's now in San Antonio, he's at Red Lobster where he works. And I'm on my face in the dark in my apartment praying, and there's a knock on my door, and I'm praying for $65 so I can put this application in the mail the next day because I needed to get it back and then mail it to Houston to get, and like my time was getting narrow, right? So I'm praying and I'm praying and I'm praying, and I get a knock on the door, and I go to the door, and a buddy of mine named Jeff is there. And Jeff goes, man, I just can't get you out of my head today. I know you're going to India. I'm so excited for your trip. I wish I could pay for the whole thing for you. I just can't. Here's what I can give you. And he opens up his wallet and he hands me $60. He goes, I hope that this will help. And I'm like, oh man, it's beautiful. Thank you so much. This is fantastic. I'm looking in the wallet and seeing a few more dollars. And I'm like thinking, I just need 5 more, right? Come on. And I said, thank you, appreciate it. He leaves, and in my arrogance, I got on my face, and I said this, no joke, this isn't a preacher story, this is window into my heart. I said, thank you, God, but you're $5 short. So I got up the next morning, went to make coffee at the coffee shop that I worked at. I made the most beautiful lattes, the best hot chocolates, everything I could make that day. Come on, tip money, and I walked with $3. $2 short. Really, I'm $2.69 short because I didn't have any money and I didn't have a bank account, so I have to go to the 7-Eleven and get a money order for 69 cents. So I need $2.69. I go through our couch I go through my car. I ask my roommate, Scott, can I go through your car for loose change? I go through his car, and I get it all together. I'm about $1 short. I said, Scott, can I borrow $1? He goes, for what? I was like, for my passport. It's got to go in the mail today. And he goes, all right, yeah, sure. What else do you need? I was like, just $1. God provided the other. God provided the rest, the 64.69. I just need $1 more. And he goes, okay. So I get my passport application. I go to the post office. I have my application. I have my photos. I have my money order for $65. And the guy looks at me and he goes, I'm sorry, the money order is wrong. And I held the application up and I said, it says right here, $65. He goes, you don't understand. We've changed our prices. I'm like, I don't have any more money. This says $65. I'm holding you to it. He goes, no. We dropped the price to $60 3 weeks ago. We don't have our new applications in yet.
That's good.
That's very good. Rewind to the night before when I said, thank you, God, but what? You're $5 short. He wasn't, if you're bad at math, if that's not your strong suit, okay? He wasn't $5 short. So I tell those kinds of stories. Why? Not so that you'll like me, but so that you'll like who? So that you'll be impressed by who? So that you'll think about who? God. For us to bring glory to God is to spend our lives with the aim that people would see him more clearly and enjoy him and understand his magnitude and understand his majesty and understand his power. And so God is worthy of our glory. God is worthy of our glorifying him. God is worthy of us making much of him. And God is worthy of us telling the stories of the things that he has done and who he is and his power and his richness. Listen, by the way, I just want you to know, some of you right now are thinking, man, I wish I had a really, I grew up, let me back up. I grew up in church where every year somebody would come and they'd give their testimony, and usually what they would do is spend 45 minutes telling what a hellion they had been and then say, but God saved me and I'm different now. That is not the correct biblical testimony, because that's a testimony of who you were, not what God has done. The correct biblical testimony is, I was a sinner, spend 5 minutes on that, and then 45 minutes on God, who God has made you to be. If your marriage is a good marriage, you've got a great testimony, because your marriage is good because of the grace and glory of God. So you say, listen, my marriage is killing it, not because of who we are, but because of who God is. If you're enjoying your relationship with your kids, it's not, man, I'm knocking this parenting thing out of the park. It's like, man, God has been gracious to us in our marriage. When you blow up your kid at the 4th of July and you take him to the ER, and the doctor goes, he's going to be fine. You go, man, thank you, God. Let me tell you that God was watching out for him, because we were all just about 8 feet away from that box of fireworks that blew up, and it could have been his face or his neck instead of just his calf, and you go, man, thank you, God, for watching out. And so what we do when we're talking about the glory of God is we are bending things, not twisting the truth, but bending them towards his direction rather than ours. We are directing praise away from us and to him. The point of the story about me going to India isn't about Ryan going to India or about what great faith Ryan had. Clearly in the story, 23-year-old Ryan was not very trusting of God. The point of the story is, look who God is. Look at how he meets needs. Look at how God provides. So we take these things and we turn them away from us to God. Psalm 115:1 captures in a nutshell this heart. Psalm 115:1 says, not to us, O God, not to us, but to your name be the glory. Not to us, not for us, not directed at me, but God, for your name be the glory, for your name be the praise, for your name be the honor. God, I give this to you. Listen to me. Because Paul in the Bible says that he knows what it is to be hungry, he knows what it is to be well fed, he knows what it is to be clothed, and he knows what it is to be naked, he knows what it is to have plenty, and he knows what it is to have lack. And so know this, that if the only testimony you and I have, if all of us, some fluke happens and the 456 people are targeted and we all lose all of our money and all of our homes and all of our clothes tomorrow, know this, that we will still have enough to glorify God about, because he has redeemed our souls from death and he has called us his own and he knows us by name, and so we still have the opportunity to direct glory to him. Not that we would be able to endure suffering so that people would look at us and think us strong, but that we endure suffering so that we can say, God gives me grace even in this suffering. Every bit of glory belongs to the King. And it is our goal in life to bring him glory with our lives. Jesus, the Bible says, is fully God. By the way, if that's a debate for you or a question for you, talk to me after class. Like, let's discuss that, because that's really a key component in salvation. Jesus is God. He is fully God. He is the fullness of God's imprint. He is the exact imprint of God's nature. The fullness of deity dwells in him in bodily form. That's Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3. That's Colossians 2:9. That's Colossians 2:19. That's John chapter 1. That's John chapter 14. That's John chapter 17. Jesus is the fullness of God, the exact imprint of his nature. If you've seen Jesus, you've seen the Father, for he and the Father are one. And on the last night of the life of Christ, in John 12:27, Jesus says, Father, my heart is troubled. As he's about to face the cross, as he's about to be arrested, Father, my heart is troubled. What do I say? Save me from this hour? No, it is for this reason that I have come to this hour. Father, glorify your name. And one of three places where God speaks audibly from heaven and says to Jesus this. He says, I have glorified it and I'll glorify it again. As Jesus is going to the cross, he is going to the cross for the glory of God. Let me just address some bad theology or tweak some theology momentarily. We like to talk a lot about how Jesus died for us, and that's true. Jesus' death and his resurrection were for us. The benefit is for us, but it was in obedience to the Father. It was to serve the Father. It was for the glory of the Father. When we think about Jesus going to the cross, we need to remember that in the book of John, Jesus says over and over and over again, I only do what I see the Father doing. I only say what I hear the Father saying. That the heartbeat of Jesus was the glory of his Father in heaven as a model to us for how we ought to live. And that what took Jesus to death was obedience and the glory of God who sits in heaven. And if that's the model that Jesus sends for us, then we too, that brings us to our application today where we'll spend the bulk of our time. That brings us to our application this: our lives are best spent for the glory of God. Our lives are best spent for the glory of God. Open up, if you would, to 2 Samuel 23. We're going to look at another story quickly from the life of David. I love this story. 2 Samuel 23, David's mighty men. David had some men who went and worked with him and served with him and were going into warfare with him from the very beginning, okay, of David's kind of like kingly pursuits. And these guys were endowed with supernatural power and supernatural strength such that they were slaying 800 men at one time. Like one guy could kill 800 guys. Like that's just unheard of, right? It's not like, like in all the action movies, how there's like 20 bad guys and then there's one Jason Statham character. And then the bad guys take turns fighting Jason Statham. And you always wonder, like, is that something they learn in bad guy school? Or like, I don't know, like why don't they all just go and try to get him? Like 20 of them could dogpile him. You've got to think that they're each about 150 to 200 pounds. Like that's a lot, right? Like, anyway, it just doesn't make sense. But these guys, these mighty men of David, with one sword, killing 800 guys, standing in the middle of the field because God has given them this strength. And I want you to hear this. 2 Samuel 23:13, reading out of the ESV here, it says this: And 3 of the 30 chief men went down and came about at harvest time to David at the cave of Adullam, when a band of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. David was then in the stronghold, and the garrison of the Philistines was then at Bethlehem. And David said longingly, oh, that someone would give me water to drink from the well of Bethlehem that's by the gate. So here's the situation. David and his army are at war with the Philistine army. The Philistine army has set up garrisons or little like military camps in these different cities in Israel. And one of those military camps is in Bethlehem, David's hometown. And David's in a war type of mindset. And he's sitting there with his soldiers, with his mighty men. And David's sitting there at battle, goes, man, what I wouldn't give for a drink of water from the water at the well in Bethlehem. Like, he's missing the water from his hometown. I grew up in Midland, and I now live in San Angelo. I haven't ever lived in a place that had good water, but I remember going to visit my dad's parents up in Oregon, And we'd go up in Oregon, and we were out there in the plains of Oregon on the eastern side of Oregon. And I remember being a kid and my mom saying, well, just go get you a drink of water. And I'm like, we don't drink our water at home. Like, I didn't know that like people actually drank water from the faucet because I had never done that growing up, you know? And so she goes, no, it's different here. And I went and got the first drink of well water there in Baker City, Oregon. And I was like, man, that's like good. You know, like it was good. I remember fishing Snake River with my dad and dipping my face down and drinking the water straight from Snake River, or going on a hike through the mountains and then my dad at the end picking me up by the feet and ducking my head into the river to cool me off. And you're just like, oh, so refreshing, right? So wherever David is, he's got like Midland water. And he's like, man, what I wouldn't give for some of the water from Bethlehem, you know, what I wouldn't give to have some of that water. And then look at what happens here. So I'm going to pick up again in verse 15. David said longingly, oh, that someone would get me water to drink from the well that is in Bethlehem by the gate. And the three mighty men, these three guys who heard this, broke through the camp of the Philistines, drew water out of the well of Bethlehem that was by the gate, carried and brought it to David, but he would not drink it. Instead, he poured it out as an offering to the Lord and said, far be it from me, O Lord, that I should do this. Should I drink the blood of these men that went at the risk of their lives? And he wouldn't drink it. And these three things the mighty men did. So these three guys, the king's sitting there talking with his soldiers, and he goes, man, I'd sure love a drink from the well of Bethlehem. And these three dudes just go. And they break through the Philistine garrison. I've got to think that if the Philistines were not incredibly aware, maybe they're asleep or whatever, that at least by the time they're coming back through, that there's some awareness of what's going on. And they come back through with a skin of water or a pot of water or whatever. Like they're over there at the well of Bethlehem and they're getting water and they're like pulling it out or however they're doing it. And they're like, there's three guys in the middle of a Philistine camp. Why? Why are they there? Just because the king had a desire. And I wonder how many of us, granted this is David and his three mighty men, but I wonder how many of us have that sort of an affection for God who is in heaven, that if God said, go here, we'd go, I'm in it, I'm on it, done. If God said, I want this person to know about me, we would say, I'll do it. Like, how many of us, at the risk of our lives, for the glory of the king, in the service of the king, would bend our will for his? The Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 10:31, it says, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. The immediate context there is this. There are a group of people in the Corinthian church who have been believers for a while, and they're eating meat that had been sacrificed to an idol. They say, look, an idol's no big deal. It's just the better meat. I'm eating this meat. But the new believers, their faith was being rocked by these guys who are eating meat sacrificed to idols. And so Paul is telling them, listen, you who are mature in your faith, don't do something that's going to compromise the faith of the younger believer. Don't do something that's going to unseat the faith of those who are younger in their Christian walk than you. And so he tells them, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it for the glory of God. In other words, some of the people in Corinth were going, I don't care how you feel about it. I like this meat better, so it's what I'm going to do. They were making a decision based on their preference rather than the character and the will of God. Paul tells them straight up in the book of Corinthians, he goes, there's nothing wrong with eating meat sacrificed to an idol. He goes, the problem is if you doing it causes someone else to misunderstand the gospel or misunderstand God, that's where the problem is. And so what Paul is encouraging the church in Corinth to do is to have the gospel, have the message of Jesus be the central force in decision-making rather than personal appetites or pleasures. Understand, please, Paul is not condemning the personal appetite. He is condemning the personal appetite when it holds the seat of most importance. He's saying you got to remove the personal appetite and replace it with the gospel. Remove the personal appetite and replace it with the glory of God. Don't go from here with the wrong lesson thinking that God says you can't have a personal appetite. We have personal appetites. We have personal biases. We have personal tendencies. That's not the issue here. The issue here is that what must hold the primary seat in our decision-making is the glory of God. Have personal convictions, have personal desires, have personal appetites. Let them be servant to the glory of God. Let them be lower than the glory of God. We are, you don't know this, but now you will. Part of the reason we were talking about God the King this month is because we have an election next month. And I want you to remember that no matter what happens in the election in 2 weeks, the kingdom of God is not marred or shaken by it. I want you to remember that God is still on his throne. I also want you to remember that at least 6 times in the scripture, 3 of those in the book of Daniel, it says that no one comes to power unless God allows it to happen. So whether it's your favorite person or the other person, get over it. Because God is still on his throne. And Jesus' day of return has not been accelerated or slowed down because of who wins some American election that will impact our country for a while. And the impact that it will have on your personal taxes or your personal feelings or your personal emotion does not in any way undermine God as king and does not in any way undo the cross or the blood that was shed there or the forgiveness that is available to us who have put faith in him. It doesn't in any way change the scope of those things that will ring for eternity, right? I was going to say eternity and then some, but eternity is like all of it. It won't undo it. And I am grief-stricken. Don't worry, I haven't been stalking your Facebook page, so this isn't personal. But I am grief-stricken by the number of people who call themselves Christians, and maybe they in fact are, who in this time put more emphasis on an earthly leader than they do the King of Glory. Who are at odds with someone else because they stand on the other side of the aisle than them. And I want you to know that if you feel hostility towards people who hold a different political view than you, then your preference is on the seat of your decision making rather than the glory of God, because Christ died for them as well as you, for them as well as me. And that our aim should be their righteousness and their pursuit of Jesus rather than their vote. God is king. And until we come to the place where that really, really resonates in us, our decision making will continue to be shaped by our preferences. Let me give you an example that's maybe a little more practical. I have a really good buddy out in Dallas area named Jed. We've been friends for 21 years. He's a pastor out there. Love this guy. He is easily one of the most gracious people I've ever had the opportunity of knowing. Super cool guy. And he's just cool. Like, he just looks cool, like all the time. Like, his casual is still cool. And I just go, like, I don't know how you do it. Like, he'll just, anyway, you just have to meet him one day. So Jed, my buddy, is this cool guy. And 6 years ago, 5.5 really, we were talking, and we were talking about this idea of glorifying God. We were talking about this idea of law versus grace. We were talking about this idea of doing things for the purpose and the glory of God. And he goes, hey, let me send you a series of lectures from a class that I was a part of. And I said, okay. So when he was in seminary, this guy had come in and preached to about 20 pastors or prospective pastors about the glory of God, basically. And so my buddy Jed had these recorded, and he sent me these 15 lectures. And in the course of this lecture, this one pastor talking to these other 20 pastors, he goes, listen, I pastor a church of about 200 people, a little less than that. And he said, so when somebody has a baby in our church, it's expected that the pastor go. When somebody dies in our church, it's expected that the pastor go. If somebody's sick, it's expected that the pastor go, because we're in a small church, right? By the way, we expect that you would go and let us know. We'll come too, but we expect that, like, community, that this is our job, okay? But that's another story. So this guy, this pastor who's preaching to these other pastors, he said, now there's this couple in my church that I don't really like. He goes, you know how that happens sometimes. You just don't like them, you know? I mean, glad that they're there, glad that they know Jesus, but like, hey, we just are different people, right? And he goes, there's this couple in my church that I just didn't like. Like, I felt like they caused trouble a lot. I felt like they were kind of like people who stirred the pot a lot. And he said, and she was pregnant, and she was due, and I got a call, hey, she's in the hospital having her baby. And he goes, so I got in my car, and I drove to the hospital, and I sat in the parking lot. I was like, I don't want to go in. I don't care about their baby. He goes, their baby's probably going to be just like them, you know? And he was like, these were my thoughts. These were my legitimate thoughts. And he asked the group of 20 future pastors there, he goes, so what did I do? And they said, you went in because it's the right thing to do. And that's what they kept saying. And he goes, wrong. He goes, I sat in my car. He goes, because hear me on this. if I go in because it's the right thing to do, I'm doing that so they'll look at me and go, he's a good pastor. He did what he wanted to do even though he didn't want it, or he did what he was supposed to do even though he didn't want to do it. Parents, that's probably language we've used with our kids. Look, sometimes you got to do the right thing even if you don't want to. I want you to know that that is not the heart of God. That is not the heart of God. And so the pastor said to his little group there, he said, here's what I did. He goes, I sat in my car for what amounted to about 45 minutes to an hour, and I said, God, there is a woman up there having a baby that you love, and I just don't seem to. He goes, I was very honest about it. And he goes, but you love her, and you want her to know you and enjoy you and delight in you, and I just don't really care about that. That was his honest feeling, right? And he said, so God, I need you to make my heart like yours. And he said, I sat in my car for nearly an hour wrestling back and forth with God until I was brought to tears and understood God loves that person. And I love that person because I want that person to know and honor Jesus. And he goes, and only then did I get out of my car and go up to the third floor and embrace the baby and the family. Because I realized, he said, that what I was doing, I had been doing for my sake, so that people could say, man, he's a good pastor. He always makes the hospital visits. He goes, I'd been doing it for my sake rather than for the glory of God. I wonder how much of what we do for our sake. We live in West Texas. I grew up in West Texas. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. I'll just tell you the truth. My parents did not make me call them ma'am and sir. But I knew to call everybody else that. I called my mom and dad, you know? But I knew that that's how you addressed everybody else. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I'll do that with a 17-year-old kid taking my order at Chick-fil-A. Yes, sir. You know, we live in West Texas, right? That's what you do. You open the door, right? That's what we do. Hear me say this. If we're teaching politeness and manners as the standard rather than the glory of God, we have set the bar way too low. Way too low. Politeness and manners for the sake of politeness and manners has no value in eternity. Here's how you know. Here's the simple question with a simple answer. Are there people who have nothing to do with Jesus that have great manners? Yes. So then the bar is set too low. The aim for us is the glory of God. The aim for us isn't to be polite to someone for the sake of being polite. The aim for us is to recognize that this person is someone for whom Christ died. This is someone for whom Christ stepped out of heaven and shed blood and went to the cross and was raised from the dead. This is someone for whom all of eternity is shaped because of the work of God through Jesus on the cross. And this is someone who God loves. And we pat ourselves on you understand, right, that if you're polite to someone to their face and then you walk away and you tell your friends, and I was nice to them even though they're jerks to me and I really can't stand them, you understand that has no value. You understand that you're just putting on airs. You understand that that's just for you, for your appearance, for your sake. Parents, you've got to quit telling your kids because I said so. Eternity is not shaped around you or for you. We've got to start teaching our kids. That it is about the glory of God. Listen to me. You can have rules and preferences in your house, and you can tell your kids, this is my preference and this is our rules. This is how we do it in our home. And you can do it in your home however you want to do it. But don't make those things about God. Draw a line in the sand and say, look, I need you to do this because it helps me out, or I need you to do this because this is a way you can serve me. And it can be about service then. God is a God who serves. If Jesus came as a servant, then we also should be servants. But we have to have the standard be Christ. If we're raising up our kids to have a moral code separate from Christ, there's no value in that. There's no worth in that. Plenty of people have a morality that's completely separate from Christ, and our aim has to be Jesus for our kids, doesn't it? Doesn't our aim for our friends, doesn't our aim for our enemies, doesn't our aim for our spouse have to be Jesus? Is there anything higher, is there anything richer than the standard of Christ? I would like to point out also that if what we're telling our kids is you need to be polite, and it doesn't matter, no matter what happens, you need to be polite, then you're going to really run into problems when You read John 8 where Jesus calls the Pharisees sons of the devil. Well, Jesus is allowed to call people sons of the devil, but I don't think that, you know what I mean? Like, now we have to backpedal. Like, listen, there was an appropriate time, Jesus, who says, I never do anything unless the Father tells me to do it. I never speak anything unless the Father tells me to speak it. At one point, flipped over tables in the temple, fashioned a whip out of a bunch of cords, and drove people from the temple, and that was in line with the will of God. Where does that fit in with us raising our kids? How does that fit in? So maybe instead of saying, hey, and I've told my kids this, and you're welcome to disagree with me, and we can talk about it if you want to, or you can just, be mad at me and not tell me for 6 months, which isn't the right choice. But I've told my kids, look, I don't need you to start any fights. But I said, if you see a kid who can't take care of themselves, if you see a kid who is weak or downtrodden or whatever being picked on, or you see somebody being beat up or whatever, you jump in. And you rescue the downtrodden. You rescue the weak. You rescue the person who's needy. And I said, and if you get in trouble at school for it, no problem. That's what they're supposed to do. But you won't be in trouble with me because Christ jumps in and rescues the needy and the downtrodden. He delivers those who are being downtrodden. I have no problem with you being a deliverer of the weak. None. But what do we teach our kids? Don't hit. Don't flip the table. Sometimes the table's got to be flipped. But on another level, Jesus also died for the glory of God. Sometimes the glory of God means it costs me everything. Sometimes the glory of God will cost me a friend. Sometimes there's no way for me to be a friend to you and still uphold the glory of God. And at some point, not because of political difference, not because we like different types of movies, but because my aim is the glory of God and yours is not, at some point, there will become a division. And I go, okay, for the glory of God. The aim is making much of Jesus. Not just morality, not just so that people will think we're doing a good job, not just so that people will pat us on the back, not just so that people will approve of us, but so that God will be glorified in the way we speak, in the way we work, in the way we talk, that's speaking, in the way we go and do all the things that we are about the glory of God. I hope, listen, let me just tweak it. If it's wrong in you, fine, no problem. It's been wrong in you. Let's tweak it this morning. I hope you're not coming here because you grew up in West Texas and you think you're supposed to be in church on Sunday mornings. I hope you're coming here because you want to be part of a family that glorifies God. That's our hope. We want to be part of a family with you that together glorifies God. We want to serve you. We hope that you want to serve us, that we can do this together, that we can know your family and you can know ours, that we can love you and you can love us, and that together all of us can become a little bit more like Christ every day until Jesus shows back up and breaks through the sky. Not fulfilling some obligation for the week that you check off the box, but we're here because we believe that God is real, and we believe that the Son of God is real, and we believe that he died on a cross, and we believe that that shed blood and that empty tomb and faith in him saves us, and we believe that our lives spent for his glory are worth more than anything else, and that's why we're going to come back every week, because the last 167 hours beat the crud out of me, and I just need some fellowship with my fellow believers so that we can sing, whether it's with Cameron or Micah, and we can proclaim that God, you are the God who spoke 100 billion galaxies into space, and all creation obeys you. And if creation obeys you, so will I. And I will praise you, and I will exalt you. And the tomb is empty, and we glorify your name, and that's why we're here, and I hope it's why you are. For the glory of God, whether we eat or drink. Most of the times, we'll be called to not flip tables. Sometimes we'll be called to flip tables. Most of the times, we'll be called not to die. There may come a time we're called to die. Most of the times, it will be showing people love and grace. Sometimes the love and grace may cause a division that we can't rectify. We don't meet your needs so you'll love us. We meet your needs because our needs have been met by the Father in heaven. We don't console you so that you'll be proud of us. We console you and comfort you because we have been consoled and comforted by our Father in heaven. We don't forgive you and love you and show you mercy and encourage you because we want you to think us nice, but we have a God in heaven who has shown us mercy and forgiveness and has built us up and has strengthened us, and we want you to know him too, for the glory of the Father. So I'll end with this. Does your life, does it really belong to God? Like the lives of these three mighty men and David, does it belong to God? Does your family belong to God? Does your job? Is your will, is your life bent on the glory of God, or is your will and your life bent around your pleasures and your preferences and your personal tastes? Have preferences, have pleasures, have personal taste, but let them be servant to God. And let us be the kind of people who say, my life is spent for the glory of the King. Not being nice to the waiter just to be nice to the waiter because you used to be a waiter and people treated you like garbage, but because the waiter is someone for whom Christ died. Because their soul still counts in the scheme of eternity. So here's our prayer today. God, give us a passion for your glory. And here's what I'd like you to do. Take just a moment with your family, with your friends, or by yourself. Take just a moment and pray this right where you are. Pray it however you need to pray it. Use whatever words you want, but God, give us a passion. Give me, pray it personally. God, give me a passion for your glory. As you continue in an attitude of prayer, would you take a moment and would you ask God to let your pleasures and your preference serve his will and his glory? You don't have to throw away your preferences. You don't have to throw away your pleasures. But would you pray that those things in your heart that are your natural bent, your natural tendencies, would you pray that those things are used for the glory of God? As we wrap it up today, consider this. I can't believe this for you. I can't make this live in your heart. I can't create a desire in you, but God can. God can bring you to a place where your life, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do is spent for his glory, for his praise, where the way you operate in your marriage, the way you operate in your family, the way you raise your kids, students, the way you are at school, the way you hang out and talk to your friends, the way you are at work, the way you are around the strangers, that those things make much of Jesus. God can use you to make much of Jesus. Would you just pray that in every capacity you have, every role you have, and name them by name where you can. Pray, God, help me as a spouse, help me as a parent, help me as an employee, help me as a friend to bring you honor and glory in all things.